Hi, everybody. Tracy over here on the left-hand side of the screen, or right-hand, whatever way it's looking. Welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting Live. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, founder of Thrive Meetings and Events and the Eating at a Meeting podcast. And on today's show, I have son and father duo here, Larry and Adam Mogelonsky, partners at Hotel Mogel, which is a Toronto-based consultancy specializing in strategic planning for hotel brands and independent hotel properties across North America. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome.
Well, and it's just for our listeners, we were having, a healthy conversation before we even started. And I have been following, Adam, when was it we had coffee?
It was 2017, 2018.
Okay, so I've been following you all since then, before then, because you give a lot of really good insights to me as a planner, on what's going on in the hotel world. And and because you work all over the country or all over North America and you travel internationally, really wanted to talk to you about what's going on with food and beverage right now. Can one of you pipe in on what you're seeing?
I'll let Adam start.
Okay.
The biggest trend that we're seeing, to summarize it in a word in food service, is labor.
Okay. Yep.
The people are just not there. It's tough to bring new people back online, fully train them, not only in the brand standards and what's on the menu, but real, genuine service. It requires you have to have a passion for it. And some people just aren't motivated that way. So a lot of hotels, hotel restaurants, and just regular restaurants are suffering to fill spots and to plan ahead on the labor side in order to fulfill and stay open for a full amount of hours. So,
right.
Like right now, I'm in downtown Toronto and I want to find a spot for a lunch meeting. And a lot of the places that I would normally choose aren't open for lunch. They're only open for dinner because they don't have the labor to open for lunch, and they would prefer to have dinner because there's more alcohol, which means more dollars per cover and more tips to incentivize the labor.
Good point. Yeah.
I just got back from a 1-month trip to Europe and working with hoteliers across the continent. Five countries. And the feedback that I received was straightforward. You really have a balancing act they have to deliver. Either A, they elect to reduce service, or B, they close outlets. So in many cases, they have 2 or 3 restaurants, they go down to one less, so they can coordinate their staff in a smaller location. They're giving up revenue, of course, but they're maintaining service levels. Universally, the big question is, where did everybody go?
That's a really good question. And actually, this morning on the news, they were talking about the Fed raising interest rates again. And the woman that they were interviewing said, if anybody who wants a job can get a job right now. I mean, there are plenty of jobs out there, but I thought it was interesting that she said anyone who wants a job. So where's everybody not working? Where's everybody working?
Well, I would hold up one of these. It's called a cell phone. You can work on one of these phones from anywhere in the world. So why should I go into a restaurant? Why should I work in a difficult job in a high stress environment with a chef that yells at me, with a sous chef that thinks I'm an idiot, with waiters who are stressed and fussed? I'm not going to work in that environment. I can work in the gig economy and earn the same amount of money without stress. Moreover, in the restaurant business, as we all know, restaurants tend to be busy Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. I want to spend that time for myself. The Me Too generation says, I'll work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Maybe I'll work 8 to 6, but you're not taking away my weekends. And that's where our folks in the hotel and restaurant industry need the labor the most. So it's a real compression.
Yeah,
it is. Go ahead, Adam.
Sorry, I wanted to add to that is what we saw during the pandemic is the instability of reopening, or the uncertainty of reopening compelled a lot of people to reskill into other parts of the service sector. So I say as a banner, where do the people go? Amazon, which is in a word to say, Uber, the Uber Eats, the gig economy, Grubhub, all these other places where they can earn as they go and flexible hours. They've reskilled to jobs that are remote, so they don't need to waste time in transport. And as well, there's this emerging narrative around living wages, which is related to inflation, where they look at a restaurant, and if it is paying minimum in the whatever market they're in, and the tips aren't good enough, then they're going to look elsewhere or continue to look elsewhere, because they know that whatever the inflation it keeps going is going to compel them to keep looking, because they're not being paid a real wage. And it's kind of a zeitgeist narrative, so to speak.
A few trends I saw in Europe, which would be an interesting applicability to North America, was the fact that the rates that they're showing include tips. So they say, if you wish, you can tip extra, but we've already included a tip in the dollar amount of the serving. The other thing I noticed is that prices have rocketed on food. And if anyone listening has gone to a supermarket and looked for a grade AAA or quadruple A or prime, whatever they call it, steak, you'll note that prices are $20 plus per pound, maybe even higher, maybe 30 or 40. Now, take that particular steak, bring it into a restaurant. Admittedly, they're buying wholesale, so they're getting a little bit of a better price. But if their food cost is $25, the standard in the industry is a 23.5% food cost. That's standard. So that means if you just say 25%, that means they have to charge $100 for that steak. They can't charge $100 for that steak. They're only going to charge, say, $65 or $70, which is even at the upper threshold, which means already their margins are being impacted. It is no longer a matter of looking at food and figuring out the price points to make your profit. It's looking at food prices for survival.
Yeah.
Whole different.
Well, that it's a whole different way to think about it. And somebody said today on that same conversation about prices or inflation is that a bag of Lay's potato chips has gone up 38% in the last year. And I mean, that's crazy in and of itself.
Having run the Lay's business way back in the days when Adam wasn't even born, actually, or maybe he just was. I can tell you that the people at PepsiCo Foods know pricing better than anyone else on earth. They're geniuses. So if they're passing that price along, I can tell you it's because their costs have moved. They don't do this without any intrepidation.
Well, that's good to know. But it is also scary, and where that is. So let's apply that to that hotel restaurant or that hotel catering menu, right? And how does that price go up?
Well, there's several aspects. One is portion control to the extreme. So if you had an 8-ounce steak, maybe you can bring that steak down to 7 ounces.
Who needs an 8-ounce steak?
Well, let's say an 8, or maybe you can start shaving your food costs that way on your proteins. The second is you can bulk up on the portions that are less costly, such as potatoes or rice. Yes, they cost money, but they can fill a plate. One of the other tricks of the trade is you can make the plates smaller. And there are companies that will actually design the plates specific for the menu that you have, and psychologically the opposite of supersize, reduce size everything. So imagine if you're serving fries on a 9-inch plate, how many fries it takes, simply put them on a 6-inch plate. The same number of fries will be overflowing. And again, all of these little tricks have to be done to reduce your food costs. Your labor costs can be reduced in other ways as well, by planning and pre-preparing portions. So rather than chopping your potatoes yourself, which is labor, and is extremely difficult to get. You'll order your potatoes. I hate to say it, your French fries will be freeze dried and ready to go directly into the fryer. It may not be as good a product, but that's the best you can do under the circumstances. And all of these, every single aspect is what's facing a director of food and beverage. In the catering side of the business, this is an even more challenging issue, because every mistake you make could be multiplied by 150 or 200 guests. So being off by just $1 or $2 on a cost of a particular item can be really nerve-wracking on the bottom line. The other aspect about catering, which is particularly sensitive, is quite often you have to quote your prices sometimes 3 to 6 months in advance. So the meeting there are people booking now meetings for January. How do you deal with the price of catering? You put in that the price is as of today and will be adjusted by the CPI. That's all you can do. Because and even the CPI, as we know, we're looking at 7-8%, is not really reflective of what's happening in premium food products.
Right.
I won't even get into the issues with grain supplies in Ukraine, and the fact that the mustard crop is down by 90% worldwide.
Wow.
There was a bad crop this year in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where most of mustard seed comes from in the world. And so my advice to people is stock up on mustard, because it's going to double in price next year. So there's no such thing as mustard futures that I know of. There could be, but I don't know about
it. Make a market.
But we're going to be facing some challenges right now. If you recall, say a year or two ago, people would come and put bread on the table. And that's not done anymore. Oh, if you want bread, that's $5 or $4 or so.
Right.
There's always a dollar amount to it. We have to look at all of these elements, and we have to realize that there are serious issues on the supply side here that have to be adjusted, because it appears that the demand side is very strong. So the concept of supersize me, no way, not anymore. Can't afford it.
Yeah, I just want to add on the beverage side for catering is what we're seeing is component simplification, where, if you have some sort of bar component, you don't really want to offer 20 different drinks. You want to offer 10, because not necessarily that might curtail a bit on the revenue side for the hotel and in the effort there, but it really helps with labor. And the quintessential example of that is it's a lot easier to pour a glass of wine than it is to prepare a cocktail. And if you have 10 people waiting at the bar, it's much better to just have beer and wine and a pre-made margarita mix than it is to actually make margaritas and have custom cocktails or signature cocktails for an event.
Right.
And working in the beverage side, there are ways to maximize return on investment. People are really into exploring premium alcohols. So you can look at pouring premium scotch, getting into bourbons, all of these things, which have great margins if you price them correctly. Ditto on wines. So again, taking a look at it, you say, well, I really am stuck with labor. Let's focus on the beverage side of F&B.
So do you think those machines, because I know you guys are tech guys as well in this side, the machines that you can go up and put your glass under there and get a pre-made cocktail, do you think those are going to be brought in?
Adam and I were in a I think it was a Holiday Inn Express in Davenport, Iowa, and of all places, there was a restaurant. I think Adam will nod if I'm correct with that. And they had these machines that hold 8 different wines, and they had 5 of them. So 40 different wines by the glass. You stuck your credit card in. You said, I want either 1 ounce, 5 ounces, or 8 ounces. It deducted the money from your credit card and poured the wine.
Wow.
And I thought it was the best wine bar on earth, because I could go and try 1 ounce of Screaming Eagle for $40 for a single ounce. But I'd never tried Screaming Eagle, and this was the best way I could get to try a wine that's over $1,000 a bottle.
Wow.
Yeah, it adds a experiential component to it that might otherwise not be possible based on labor.
Right.
We're here in Ontario, and I don't think that would fly with the Smart Serve regulations. But I guess in certain states in the U.S. or other countries, anything goes.
Well, I guess you could maybe make sure the machine recognizes your credit card or your ID, saying you've had too many, right? You've already ordered 5 in the last hour. We won't let you have any more.
Well, limit it to 1 ounce pours. You'll be there forever. You'll never get crushed. You're spending all your time entering your 4-digit passcode, and if you can't figure out what your passcode is at one point, you can't get a drink.
Yeah,
exactly. Now, kind of on that same kind of topic, what about ghost kitchens? I know that one management company is utilizing ghost kitchens to help reduce their labor costs. Are you seeing that in some hotel brands or franchise ownerships?
Well, I haven't seen it, and only because I'm dealing with hotels at the 5-star range. And for a 5-star hotel or a 5-diamond 5-star, the focus is on food and beverage authenticity and controlling their environment. The concept of a ghost kitchen is interesting because you basically pass the labor issue off to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea. The practicality is a challenge.
Okay. I mean, getting into back to the hotel and.
Yeah.
I mean, it's food is, again, it's experiential. So a lot of places, a lot of hotels or restaurants in general want to have that food prepared on site as part of the experience. And we're seeing more of the move. We'll continue to see it more towards the open kitchen model, where restaurants, you can view right into the kitchen because it adds to the experience. And particularly coming out of the pandemic, people want to see what's going on, and see the kitchen and get away from their own kitchen. The ghost kitchen model, any delivery service, it's going to have huge inroads for the online ordering.
Right. Okay. Well, so on that note, and I think you guys wrote recently about Resorts World.
I was just going to talk about Resorts World.
And they've partnered with Grubhub.
Well, Resorts World, for anyone who hasn't been there, is a diner, is a must attend. I spent a week there just after opening, attempting to try some of their 23 different restaurants.
Wow.
But apart from the sit-down traditional restaurants, they have what I'm going to call a street scene. They give it a fancy name. But what they do here is, imagine a food court where all of these different outlets are located in a hub. You never talk to any of those outlets directly. You go to a kiosk and order what you want. And you can order something from restaurant A, something from B, something restaurant C, and they call you on your cell phone when it's ready and you pick it up.
Wow.
If you want it to be delivered anywhere, to your room, to your poolside, or I guess to your gaming table, although that would be a little bit extreme. There's a Grubhub component where Grubhub manages the delivery, and they have delivery stations where the product can be kept warm. So it's quite fascinating, and it really is a true travel on food of the world. They literally have every single country represented. It's quite remarkable.
Wow. Very cool. I've been to an event at the pool, but I haven't been into the rest of the hotel. So I definitely need to make sure that I get there to try that out.
Genting Palace. That's the fancy Chinese restaurant. It may be the best Chinese restaurant I've been to, and I've been all over the world, including Hong Kong. And this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I heard they have a vegan restaurant as well.
I didn't try it.
No. Adam, you weren't there?
No, I wasn't. Larry and I divide and conquer on visiting where we have to visit our clients.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Adam ends up going to Florida, and I end up going to London, England. I guess these things happen.
So what with you've written about the experience economy, and you've written and what that means. How will the food and beverage trends that you're seeing impact that experience going forward? And we've talked a little bit about it already, but what do you think about, that personalization of food as well?
Adam, you want to go? I have a number of ideas on this.
Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit for the experience, but the demand is also there. And what we're talking about when we mean the experience economy is emotions and memory. And that's what it boils down to. Is there's so many different ways to go about it in terms of creating a unique experience that excites more than just taste and smell, and increases memorability. That's the word. So even something as simple as opening a bottle of wine tableside, if you think about this trend towards twist off bottles versus opening a cork, opening a cork is a better experience. And as well, even something as simple as a bottle of white wine ordered to the table, having one of those chilled stands where you can keep the bottle chilled next to the table versus just plunking it down at the center. Just a little flourish, a little touch adds miles to the memorability and to the experience overall.
Okay.
I'll give you a very simple example that someone could use. I'll go to order a steak at a steakhouse, and everything is a la carte. So I order a fillet, and that steak is going to arrive on the plate with nothing else. How about if you just put a small edible flower on the plate? Just a small incremental cost, maybe is 10 cents if you a restaurant buying them. But the fact is that it would be highly memorable to me because I'd never seen an edible flower, and the chef could say, or the waiter rather could say, "Oh, these are edible flowers. Try them." And like all of a sudden, I'm not looking at the steak, which is 8 ounces, which is really 7.5, rounding up to 8, with some sauce on it to increase the weight. But I'm focused on this little edible flower, which perhaps many people have never had an edible flower before.
Right.
And you can create a little bit. That's a very simple idea that pretty much anybody can do. But I'm getting more and more, and this is an adjunct to what you just said. We have a number of trends taking place. We all know about the locavore trend. We all know about the trends of being unique and different and personalizing it. But if I have a menu and I look at it and one says meatloaf and the other one says meatloaf like your grandma used to make, which one are you going to buy? Now, that costs nothing to add a few pixels on your printer. But again, it talks about home cooking, and it may hark back to people who said, yeah, my grandma made great meatloaf and my wife won't make it for me, so I'm going to order the meatloaf. So I want everyone to think about getting back to basics, talking about home cooking, talking about personalization, regional specialties, seasonal focuses. Right now in Ontario, it's peach season. I would expect that my local restaurant would put a few peaches on the broiler and bring them with the steak. I haven't seen it yet. I know I do that at home, but peaches right now are rather inexpensive, and they're a delicacy, and we're at peak season. Are restaurants thinking? Well, if you're part of a chain, you don't think, you just act. You're told what to do, you say, yes, sir, and you follow the rules. But if you're anything else beside that, you should take advantage and capitalize upon seasonal and local foci. It's just the nature of what to do to make your restaurant better.
Yeah, in terms of experiences, a good adage to remember is that people also eat with their eyes. So a big trend that we're seeing is the Eat the Rainbow movement, which is to say that getting as many different colors on the plate really adds that visual appeal.
Yep, it really does. I remember going to a meeting and somebody got everything that was served on her plate was white, and And why is
Good
that advertising?
contrast.
Right. And Larry, even just adding that little flower adds, because it's a brown steak on a white plate, it adds like a pink or a green, something like
Yeah.
that. It really would enhance that.
Well, even just pre-made sauces that are different colors,
Right.
blending up some beets or something like that to give it
Right.
that magenta fuchsia color.
Right.
A lot of avocado sauces to give it that green.
Right.
There's little ways to add color, which then allows you to charge more, which is important, but also adds that memorability.
Yeah, and that personalization. And personalization is not just for the individual, but it's also for the restaurant. So instead, have you eaten at XYZ? You don't want them to say, yeah, I ate there and the prices are double what they were before the pandemic.
Right.
Well, they might be double. They might be higher. For sure they will be. But do something extra to offset it. Our local tavern has taken the prices up for a steak from $45 to $60. So I tried one of their $60 steaks, and the meat was not even a category. And I sent it back and said, this is unacceptable, because what people have to do is recognize that some restaurateurs still don't get it.
Right.
And unfortunately, in this business, you have to be on your toes all the time. Just because your costs are up, just because your labor has shot through the roof and you can't even find half the servers you need, you have to compensate for that with people always remember quality.
Mm-hmm.
And people, I can remember that lousy steak, and I remember who I was with, and I remember the date it was, and I remember what was wrong with the steak. And sadly, that piece of meat should never have gotten onto the plate. It should have been put aside by the chef and returned to his wholesaler saying, this steak was unacceptable. Give me a credit.
Yeah, to add to that is to your experience, Larry, to unpack that, it boils down to something that everyone can look up on Wikipedia. Is called the peak end rule, where when we think about memory in hindsight, people remember the peak of an experience and they remember the end of an experience. Not in absolute terms, but they're more likely to remember the peak and the end. So when we talk about people remembering the price or the price differential pre-pandemic, all that sort of stuff, one thing that hoteliers or restaurateurs could do is you don't want to end on the bill. So you give people the bill, they pay, give them some cookies or some mints or something cheap afterwards. So the last thing they remember is a little piece of food, something sweet, something that is endemic of the quality of the restaurant, not necessarily the bill. And then, of course, the peak, that rotten steak, that can be fixed with some service side, where you really need to train people to really go over the top to correct those.
Yeah, I use the terms, some accounting terms. In accounting, they use for inventory management, FIFO, first in, first out. LIFO, last in, first out, which is not an acceptable accounting practice, but it is the only practice that counts in food and beverage. So your accountants are looking at FIFO, but you're looking at LIFO. What is the last thing you do? That is the lasting image that is going to be given to your customers. We didn't even talk coffee. Coffee, even though prices have gone up, still has the best margin of anything that you're going to serve. So don't go cheap on the coffee. Get a really great blend, have it custom made for you, and say, hey, this is my custom blend. What do you think of it? And you've already positioned yourself as being a superb coffee, and now you've got an opportunity to generate more. And given what I call the Starbucks price standard, which is a basic coffee is $4 or $5, you can charge $4 or $5. Your cost is going to be 25 cents. And now if you're up your price to 35 or 40 cents, your margin's impacted, but not much.
Well, okay, meeting planner's biggest gripe is $132 for a gallon of coffee. It's already that much.
And then I think that should be looked at, and it should be, yes, it's $132, but this coffee is custom blended for it. It is the best coffee you'll ever taste, and we come with a number of sides that go with it. The coffee includes cookies or candies or snacks. And it also includes that. So you don't say it's $132 for this cauldron of coffee. It's $132 for this coffee service, which includes all of these extras. And then you rationalize it and you say, okay, makes sense.
Well, and I'm going to throw something on there as well. It also includes your alternative milks, because there are some properties that are charging you for having the soy milk or the nut milk and everything else. I got charged $38 a quart for soy milk to add it onto my coffee bar. And whereas Paul McCartney's asking Starbucks not to charge extra for the alternative milks.
Yeah,
right?
Well, Paul McCartney is one person. I drink my coffee black, so I don't really get involved in it. But the costs are going high, and what are people supposed to do?
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think the reframing of it as a coffee service, it goes back to that meatloaf versus your grandma's meatloaf example. Is people really are looking for specificity of details in everything now. So it's no longer good enough to just have a coffee blend per se. You have to say it's a coffee blend and write out all the tasting notes. Or one step further is people are looking for single origin coffee.
Yeah.
And single origin coffee, they're looking for specificity to all other ingredients. It's no longer just a side of lettuce. It's what type of lettuce is it? Chocolate, wine, listing off the various tasting notes of wine by the glass. Just being more descriptive about things really goes a long way to set the mood.
Well, what I saw in my 3 Michelin star restaurant was not only the fact that they told you what you were eating and what the ingredients were. They also told you every single location where that product was sourced. So there's nothing stopping you on a coffee service that's saying it's 100% Arabica beans, custom blended for us, and the beans were selected from Ecuador, Venezuela, and 3 other countries, whatever. And just make sure when you pour the beans in, no one sees you pouring it from a Starbucks bag.
Right.
And if you create the story. It might still burn somebody that they paid $132 for that cauldron of coffee, but at least they'll say, well, it's pretty damn good coffee.
Right.
So that's the way you have to do it.
Well, and there's some planners who have taken, like, instead of doing coffee service, they're going to give you a $5 gift card to Starbucks. But then I don't know how that necessarily helps with the community of the event, whereas everybody's standing in that line over there versus the line that you could use and upsell that service.
It's awful. It's completely the wrong thing to do. Sending people outside of a meeting to go to even if it's within the hotel, it takes people away. The second you take them away, they flip out their phone and they start going and you've lost them. That is the dumbest thing. I would say to a planner, suck up the $132 and let's move on. Right.
My friend Lynn Wellish is piping in here saying, nice nickel, since such nickel and diming makes it hard to gauge what you're really spending. Did you ever think you would see a $20 hamburger with $2 more for fries instead of chips?
My answer is 20. Just get ready for 30.
I mean, a McDonald's, somebody told me a McDonald's Big Mac meal is $11 now.
Yeah, and I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. There's a lot of chemicals in there.
Yeah, but this whole inflation thing, it's going to keep going. So get ready for a $30 burger.
At our local, again, the local pub, a burger is $32.
Wow.
Now that seems high, and it is, but it is a burger experience. It is a home cooked bun, tremendous bacon, blue cheese, a great patty of beef that they've just ground, lettuce and tomatoes, and some home cut fries on the side. Is over $30, but I'd look and say that's an experience. If it's $20 and it's just a burger and there's nothing going to it, and you look at it and you say, well then yeah. Not really
So I popped on your website this morning just before we got on, and I found an article that I had found a couple of weeks ago as well, that Adam, I think you penned it, was from B to B from bed and breakfast to breakfast or bed and lunch for a hotel package, intermittent fasting. How it was interesting to read, to learn how hotels, like, how do you package food and beverage, especially if you're doing an event, but looking at the services that they're offering in that food and beverage and that intermittent fasting along with other dietary trends.
Right. So the whole thing with intermittent fasting is it harks at a bigger thing, which is the humans' inability to really predict exponential trends. And the science is out. Intermittent fasting is incredibly good for your body. The bottom line is, without citing any scientific papers here, you can't fix a car with the engine on. And throughout the 20th century, the food industry basically funded a lot of science that shows, you need 3 square meals a day. That's what you need, right? And you need to snack. Snacking boosts your metabolism. Wrong. It doesn't. Snacking actually causes a lot of problems. So now we're going back to various forms of intermittent fasting. The most basic is an 8-16, where you eat everything within an 8-hour window, and then you have 16 hours off, including sleep. So you take someone like me who intermittent fasts and has incorporated that into my regular lifestyle. A B&B package or trying to be upsold on breakfast does nothing. In fact, it does a negative because it shows the hotel doesn't really know who I am.
And now we have the counterpoint.
The
counterpoint is that Adam is at one end of the spectrum where he gets it, he understands it, and he's living proof of someone who manages their health exceptionally well. When you're planning a meeting, you have to plan for the average, though. And the average is somebody who expects still 3 meals a day, and they expect to be wined and dined by the host. We have seen, and there's a science to it, that you can create meals that will actually improve both memorability as well as eliminate the 3 p.m. time for a sleep. And you can construct menus that are actually healthy. And Adam, we were at a place north of Toronto where there was a science that the chef was undertaking to really understand and build a lunch menu that actually promoted and adjusted the sugar levels in your body so you wouldn't have this huge peak and crash, about a couple hours after lunch. Adam, do you want to fill in on what they were doing?
Yeah, so it's the science basically, breakfast, you got to have it, lunch, you got to have it, snacks, you got to have it, but it's a matter of, do you serve cookies or do you serve fruit? And both, they might, on a gram by gram basis, they might have the same amount of raw sugar in them, but the body interprets them both vastly differently. So one, you with the cookies, you peak and crash, and then you're left in the afternoon and you have an unproductive afternoon and you need a ton of coffee to recharge. Versus fruit has a blunted insulin response and therefore will help to sustain that thoughtfulness throughout the afternoon. And that's a very basic example of it. So when we look at other examples, like, do you have baked potatoes as a side, or do you have rice and beans, which has a little bit more to it? And there's tons of very minor tweaks you can do to increase the productivity of that meeting time based on the foods you serve.
Well, and that just makes me think about how, one, we could reduce food waste by not having all this excess food that we're serving, as well as improve the results of meetings because of the food that we're serving. So it actually enhances not just the bottom line of the hotel, but it enhances the overall meeting in itself. But
also it impacts future revenues because meeting planners, knowing that this is going to be a future trend, are more likely to select those venues and those hotels that have a more contemporary menu that has these healthy options.
So how do we get chefs to move that way, or food and beverage director? Who's leading that charge?
Well, having worked in this area, it's not easy, okay, because
Okay.
the trends are there, and it's like all of those penguins ready to jump off the cliff. They know the first one that jumps off is probably going to be eaten by the seal or the shark or whatever. So everybody's sitting on the edge waiting, because the traditional menus that are offered are fairly traditional. So who's going to be the first one to step out and say, this meal is going to alleviate the issues of the afternoon. This is healthier. So someone expects their cookies and coffee at 3 p.m. Instead, no, we're going to give you some granola snacks and some green tea. And they're going to look at you and say, this isn't a yoga class. This is a meeting of the truckers or whatever.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you have to work gradually and start with some healthier options on your menu of catering, or your catering menu rather. Start with some healthy options and slowly increase them. And then if you have a situation where people can test it, give them an opportunity to try it. So kind of put them out and say, look, I'm going to add a few healthy options onto the buffet, and let's see how they go.
Mm-hmm.
I know that right now, if you go to any location, you will see vegetarian options on a menu, something you'd never see before. There always is a vegetarian option. And increasingly, you're going to see more of that as people recognize that healthy eating is part of the longevity process. It's part of how you as an individual survive. You cannot live on steaks and Diet Coke. Your body is not going to, after a while, something's going to pop out or pop loose or stop working. It just isn't working for our bodies. Our bodies, man has evolved over the past thousands of years quite slowly, and the evolution is taking place continuously. But the revolutions in food science, talking about artificial sweeteners and other aspects, are just not in Homo sapiens diet or plan. Think of it this way: in Canada, we use aspartame because aspartame in the United States is considered a poison. In the U.S., they use saccharin because saccharin in Canada is considered a poison. Okay, what gives here?
Right.
The answer is, if you have to have a soft drink, go back to the original Coke. It's a great product. It uses corn sugar, and you know what? You'll get a buzz from it. Just drink one. Right. Not 2, not 10, and don't supersize. You'll have a fantastic drink. Pepsi is fantastic as well. And again, but the diet drinks are something that really you should use with caution. They are not, and Adam can explain this better, but you will not lose weight moving on diet drinks. It's just an example.
Yeah,
I wish they'd supersize the water cup versus reduce. When you ask for water, they give you the Dixie size cup.
Ask for 2.
Yeah.
So,
or even just some carbonated waters. Just some. There's lots of different flavors out there. Like look at what that brand LaCroix has done in terms of high end 0-calorie beverages.
Right. Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we just had a tasting of 0-calorie wines. Zero alcohol wines, very light on calories as well, where they've taken a series of botanicals and mixed them with apple cider vinegar to create wines. And you taste them, and your mind is saying, well, they're wines, but I can't pinpoint it. There's not one grape in the entire thing.
Wow.
And they're
it touches on another trend, which is the growth of non-drinkers.
Exactly.
Yep. Drink alcohol or are very selective about the times they drink. And particularly in a meeting setting where time is so fleeting, people don't want to compromise their brain power with, beer after beer or glass of wine after glass of wine, where you can easily pound through 15 ounces of red wine. And then, the then you're only at 80% of what your brain can do.
You'd be
Right.
lucky if you're hitting 80 at 15 ounces. And
Right.
let alone the responsibility of what's known as the Innkeepers Act, which ensures
Mhm.
that they're drinking at your event and you don't have any controls. They can drink as much as they want and they get into their car. You are responsible.
Mhm.
You have
Yep.
to be very cautious there. And
Exactly.
so offering a non-alcoholic alternative is an important way to mitigate, not necessarily eliminate your risk, but certainly mitigating it by offering these non-alcoholic alternatives.
That are not the traditional soda. Let's clarify
Yeah,
that.
forget soda.
Yeah.
They look like wine,
Yeah.
they taste like wine, but they have zero alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of them also incorporate, healthy ingredients like the
Mm-hmm.
ginger drinks, lemon, turmeric, all this sort of stuff you can throw in there to add color, add flavor, and add a health component.
Yeah.
Right.
Right now, there are numerous gin alternatives that have zero alcohol, and you can make a gin and tonic. It'll taste like a gin and tonic, but there's no alcohol.
Wow. That's amazing.
And these products are expensive. They're not cheap because
Mm-hmm.
the systems involved in building them and constructing them are quite costly. But they have virtually eliminated the need to have alcohol at an event. I could have a party with zero alcohol, and I could have zero alcohol beer, wine, and gin and tonics. And I haven't quite done scotch yet, but I'm sure someone will work on it.
Somebody will get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking to 5-10 years from now, what does the event or food and beverage at a hotel, especially in the event side, the culinary side, look like to you?
Well, Adam, why don't you tackle this first? So
Well,
one
thing we saw during the pandemic was the death of buffets, but I am very bullish on buffets in terms of a comeback, mainly because you can do a lot with them. They get people out of their chairs to move around for increased socialization, and they're low on labor, relatively speaking. That
you
said,
don't have servers, right?
Yeah, that said, is buffets can use a little bit of a makeover in terms of creating almost more stations, as I like to say, where you have buffet stations where, instead of just having this big trough full of pre-made meat sliced up and with a little candle burner underneath, you have a carving station where somebody can go up there, get it pre-sliced, but there's somebody there to explain and have a little point of interaction. And again, I see sort of the station model as being really great for events because it gets people moving about the space instead of just the traditional one where you have a plated event, you sit down at your rounds and you're basically just seated in the same place talking to the same people for 2.5, 3 hours, and then you leave.
What I also like about the station model is the fact that there is a portion control. And what I saw, we were at the Halakalani Hotel in Honolulu, and this was during the pandemic. And we traveled there, and despite having shots and all that stuff, we got to the hotel, and they have a Sunday brunch, which is considered one of their signature events. And everyone got up into lines, and there were 6 or 8 different stations, and it was all glassed in, or so I say polycarbonated in, so you could see what you wanted. And you talked to the server, who was wearing a mask and a shield, and they went and you said, I want this egg roll, and you got one of those, and I want this piece of beef at another place, and they would hand it to you all in very small plates. So you would go back and forth several times, but you got exceptional food. And the wait staff, which I noticed there were less than normal, were clearing plates. So there were more bussers than waiters. And yes, they still served you coffee and beverages. So I thought the model worked well, and I could see having buffets returning in a catering sense, but a very different type of buffet than what the giant slap it on as you go through with a giant plate, because this also helps you manage your cost controls on product quantities.
Right.
More of an interactive buffet.
No drones delivering foods to tables.
No,
maybe.
That's not
I mean, why not? If they can figure out the precision in that. I mean, hey, I mean, you might see it where every table at an event comes with a pair of AR glasses, augmented reality, and then you throw them on and you get to see your virtual food, but you don't necessarily get to eat it. Or joking,
make everybody even more hungry. Yeah.
Adam and I have discussions about QR codes, and we haven't talked about them. But
let's talk about them if you want. Yeah.
I hate them. So I just think the idea of putting my phone up and looking and reading the menu, which many of us have done during the pandemic, is really secondary to the experience of being handed a menu. Now, that's at the premium side of the spectrum. At the mid to lower side, I could see having a QR code, which you scan to read the menu, and that allows you to automatically adjust the prices daily if you wanted to, because the QR code is not stored in your computer, and then being able to order with intelligence. I'm always reminded that we've been to those restaurants, and my wife always says, I don't have my glasses with me. I can't read my cell phone. Sorry, what do we got here? And ask for a printed menu. But I could see them making a bit of a comeback. And I don't know, in a hotel ballroom, you said in your keywords, that's a little bit different. I would suggest that when we're talking about a catered event, people ordering in advance what they want. So the person who is the host sending out notes saying, what do you want? Do you want a low sugar, a vegan meal? All of these, there's going to be a number of different varieties. People have ordered, they sit in their specific place, and I got a meal that has fish, and Adam beside me got a meal that is vegetarian. Well, no, Adam got the steak. He got two of them. And the person next to me got a vegetarian meal, so that because there are so many varieties and so many issues and challenges that by trying to create one menu, you're not going to satisfy the bulk of the people. And that will add to food costs, of course, because for the kitchen, instead of preparing one meal times 200, they might be preparing 4 different meals with a varying few, but at least they will know beforehand exactly how much they're producing, because they'll have those orders in. And yes, of course, you add a few extras for those people who have somehow forgotten.
Right.
I wanted to add that, in direct contrast to the move towards healthier options, is we could see an exact sort of contrast to that in extreme decadence, where you have people, you have a whole salad bar, different types of salads, vegan, plant-based stuff, sustainable fish, all that fun stuff, and then out comes the dessert, and it's a 20-layer chocolate fudge cake or something very extravagant that also adds an experiential component in via its extravagance. Right.
That's interesting. And just making sure that, how many people actually want to have that as well, combining that too. All right. So we're almost at an hour, which I could talk to you all forever. So my last final question is, because what the show is based on is safe, sustainable, and inclusive.
Right.
So what does that mean to you? What does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience mean to you?
Well, I'll add a few comments, and while Adam contemplates the big one. Safe means that all reflects the individual. So if on a basic situation, no peanuts, that starts with safe. You should have a peanut-free food for everyone, because anaphylactic shock is very serious and can be extremely harmful. Safe also means ensuring that the cleanliness is above and beyond. We were at an event several years ago where everyone at the table except me got food poisoning. I didn't eat the salad, which was actually plated and down on the table. And a hint from my standpoint: if some food is already on the table, I will not eat it. I want it served to me because I don't know how long it's been there. But in this particular event, and I won't mention the name of the location, 58 cases of food poisoning out of 120 people sitting.
Wow.
And this was a quality location. So food safety, number one. Number two, safety for very serious issues such as no peanuts. Safety also means comfort to the individual, which means that yes, you have a vegetarian option. Yes, you have a if you're serving meat, you have a fish option. And yes, you know all of the ingredients that take place in every single one of your items that you're serving, so that just in case something happens, you've had a proper amount of preparation that you can give to individuals who are concerned. Adam, that's safety. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, moving on to sustainability, I'd say that sustainability is something that people want on both sides, customers and hotels recognizing it. It's also something you can market and charge more for. So an example we have here in Canada is Oceanwise for sustainable fish. You slap on an Oceanwise logo because you partner with them, and all of a sudden you can charge 10, 15, 20% more for a cut of fish. And people appreciate that because they know that you're managing things sustainable. The next issue is, of course, with sustainability is the zero waste movement. So it's not just a matter of using beets, but using beetroot greens. So you're using the green portion of it, and you're using the entirety of that vegetable, or even on the meat side, nose to tail, which is, it's not just, it's finding interesting ways to incorporate organ meats, which are actually very healthy, and other parts of the animal, not just the prime cuts of steak. In terms of upcoming trends for the future, one that hasn't caught on yet, but will have to, because governments are going to start to get involved, is invasivorism. So we have these unnaturally introduced species that have taken over ecosystems. So here in North America, we have the 4 species of Asian carp that are rampaging through the Mississippi. And then in the Great Lakes system, we have zebra mussels. So right now they're sort of taboo to put on the menu, and Asian carp is slimy, plus it has a double spine, so it's harder to fillet and get a nice looking cut. But eventually, through government subsidies and just general ramp up of awareness, Asian carp could become the primary thing that people are eating, simply because it isn't interfering with the natural ecosystem. And in fact, eating Asian carp is helping the environment instead of detracting from it.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, and then we could also go into the insect conversation as well, but we're going to wrap it up on that carp. What about inclusion? What do you think that word means when we think about food and beverage?
Well, inclusion in my mind means ensuring that all of your guests have food that they can eat, that they feel comfortable. Now, of course, you have people who are, say, very strict in halal or kosher. So you have to manage those issues. You have people who are vegan and vegetarian. You have to manage those as well. So inclusion means finding a way with your menus that every person who is attending can be fulfilled with some substance. And that doesn't mean reducing quality at any time either.
I'd add that with inclusion, if there's also a cultural aspect, and that is you have to have the proper staff training, so that way they know that there's going to be people with different diets coming in, and they have to be trained and know to be empathetic to those diets as well.
I like that. Yep. Well, Larry and Adam, thank you so much. I will continue. I appreciate your insight today, and I will continue to listen and read all of your insights that you share on the Hotel Mogul. And everybody there, you can find them here at hotelmogel.com. And on another podcast, I heard you the two of you put out like 20 pieces of literature a month. Is that right?
Yeah, sometimes more.
Yeah,
Sometimes
just have to work all the time. That's the new normal, right?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
we have a new book coming out this fall, which is basically called How to Sell More Wine.
Okay.
And it's not a guide that takes you through the basics of wine, but it's a guide for sommeliers and waiters to understand the wine business and how they can generate more revenue and profits for their respective restaurant.
And I saw that you did something about that a little bit on one of your posts recently.
Yes, so this is 70,000 words on that topic.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I will look forward to promoting that. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Adam and Larry, thank you for your time today. This is the Eating at a Meeting podcast, and we are here on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube every Wednesday at 12 o'clock. And you can also, after the fact, download us on all your favorite podcast platforms. So tell your friends and tune in next time. Until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Oops. And broadcast.